Yo, what up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Think of Artists. We have cryomera in today's episode. This is episode, I believe, this is close to episode 20. It's been almost like that many episodes already. Yeah. So how's it going? Welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Pretty chill. Thanks for asking.
So yeah, we're just pretty much gonna start. It's just to ask a few questions. Learn about you, what you do, your opinions about certain things in the art world, and
Yeah.
pretty much go from there. And I guess like the basic question we could start with is, what kind of art do you do?
Kind of two categories I fall into.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly I work in pen and ink, and so like the kind of traditional dip pen method. And then second, I do printmaking, specifically relief printing. And what that means is I take my original designs and I carve it out of a board, roll that with ink, and stamp it to sort of create kind of like analog reproductions of the print.
And how long
And
did?
on top of that, sorry, I totally forgot to mention, on top of that, genre I work in is mostly like dark surreal. So that's
So
pretty
yeah, yeah, I seen artwork. So how long does a crate or like a wood carving like kind of take?
um probably like at least a few days. I'm kind of all over the place because like the way I do things is I stream on Twitch, I create the artwork, and I also travel a lot to like sell at
Mm.
shows. And so what usually would like take a few days of work is sometimes spread out between weeks or months just because like I've got so many plates to spin.
Oh, so you just like you can't like just finish one project. You got to go like a few in between.
Yeah, it's my schedule is like super fractured. So I'm trying to spend this year trying to like work on efficiency and making
Mm.
things as like streamlined as possible.
Okay. What is like your favorite medium to do right now? Like,
Honestly, like the carving I think is probably the funnest for me right now because what I can do without even having to create a pen and paper like original is I can just like draw directly on wood and create the design from there. And so it's kind of not already set in stone what it's supposed to look like. I just kind of start with something that I know can be applicable for that medium and carve, like, just kind of start the project carving right away. So I think that that's pretty fulfilling for me right now.
yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the carvings. They're extremely a lot of good detail, like the little
Thank
lines on
you.
that. Yeah, because I barely get into inking a little bit because that's one of the things I want to improve on because like my outlining is like okay-ish, and when I add color, that's when it blooms. But yeah,
Yeah.
I need to get better at inking because that's where the detail really comes in. And every piece that I've seen, like the detail, it's like you don't need color pretty much. It's very like
Thank you. Yeah. I actually have people asking me a lot. They're like, when are you going to color it? And I'm like, maybe
going.
never. I don't enjoy coloring, and so that's probably why I put so much like emphasis on the line work is because like eh.
Yeah, like me, I'm the opposite. Like my characters need color in order for it to look like good. But if you take the color out, the outline is like pretty bad. Cause what I mean by that is like it doesn't really stand out as much, especially with detail and all that. And I was gonna like, how did you learn how to pretty much add like a lot of detail into your characters and still make them stand out and very like still noticeable, pretty much.
Thank you. I That's kind of what I'm going for is to have detail there to kind of chill myself out, but like not have it get lost. And I don't really think if the question was like, how did I get into that?
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, like I always like doodled in the margins of my homework, and so with that, it's not like you can use like tons of like colors, watercolor, this or that. Like that was kind of a little bit of my relief was being able to um, just do it when I didn't feel like doing anything else. And so I think from that, like using a bit of a distraction, I just naturally became accustomed to just working with like one color and just going with details and almost like seeing how much form I could cram into like such a small part of the page. And then as time went on, it's like because I was so used to doing that in school, it just kind of evolved from there. And so it's like what I knew, what I was comfortable with, and then the detail wise, like it's not like when I make a picture, my objective is not like, oh, I need to add tons of detail. It's just like
Hmm.
I just want to make it like fun for me to create. And so I think to make it fun, I just kind of fill in uh like all the empty spaces, I suppose.
And what's like your average time on a piece like since you add a lot of detail into a design or a character, how long does like averagely it takes for you?
I try not to pay attention to that. That's
Okay.
actually one of the questions I get asked the most is like, "How much does this take you?" And I'm like, some will take like less than a day,
Hmm.
um, and some will take
2,000 years later.
weeks because I just can't decide on it. And
Mm.
so I specifically like, it's not like being in a production line of like a fast food restaurant. Like I don't want to worry about making the process super efficient for myself. I just don't keep track of that so I can just like enjoy it.
Oh, so like that just keeping like too much pressure on yourself and all that. Just
Yeah.
let the day go by or whatever. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because when I work in pizza, it's just 5 hours pass, but it seems like only an hour pass kind of thing. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I get it. I get that. Um, and since like, what are your inspirations for your art? Like, any inspirations that kind of inspire you, or just kind of just thought of your own style and just develop it?
Um, I actually found out this guy's name forever. This is a bit of a segue story, but there was this artist that had a specific work that I've been trying to find for years. And I forgot if he's a French artist, so I don't know if his name is pronounced Nico Delort or Delort. So his work is he like rocks that minimal color to the nth degree. He's absolutely incredible at what he does. Katsuya Terada does actually work in color, but the beauty is in some of his line work. There's other printmakers, like one goes by Mazatli, that I follow who does incredible work. But to be honest, like I could write just pages and pages of like all the artists that inspire me. So I usually just kind of pick something that I like from each and then like try to incorporate it into my style.
And do you have like sort of like I don't know, I guess like a lot of artists kind of have like a folder of like kind of references and ideas kind of thing. Do you have that kind of thing too?
I mean, not in a super intuitive way. Like, I just like save folders on Pinterest
Hmm.
or Instagram if I find stuff. Like, I have one Instagram that's like one folder in my saves that is like branding. And it started out as like branding, like graphic design, and then it turned into what's the stuff I really like that I want to use as a possible creative reference for my work. And then some is like color, some is anatomy. And so sometimes I just save folders of that, but, like, to be honest, I don't look at those more than, like, 1 day out of the month at a time, and so I usually just kinda try to start from scratch with whatever I create.
Okay, okay. And so, because I know like you have everything on like I mean I've seen your like your websites, your social media and Instagram, all that kind of stuff. How important do you feel an artist in today's age needs like all this like social media now in order for them to promote themselves?
Like a delicate balance, I really do think, artists nowadays, like, it's kind of like I don't think I would be a full-time artist if I didn't have social media. It's kind of incredible that we have that at our fingertips, and, like, compared to lots of other artists out there, I don't have, like, a large following.
Mm-hmm.
But I have enough where some people pass by my table if I'm at events and they're like, "Oh crap, I follow you on Instagram." And so I think nowadays it's like I wish we didn't have to rely so much on social media because it can be incredibly draining.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like this social media thing is giving like millions more opportunities to be a full-time artist. So it's kind of like if that is actually making it easier for us in this day and age to become full-time artists than having to rely on what we did in the past, which was like try to send your work to as many galleries as possible and try to enter into shows, which is like still very important. It doesn't to me it doesn't make sense to like try to be a full-time artist and not give any attention whatsoever to social media because there's so many opportunities I scored just by like having people reach out to me there and being able to like showcase my work. I just think that like you can't always rely solely on social media. Like I do think that artists need to use it, but that you can't just like put all of your time and effort into like one platform or not putting your work out and like through other means. So I still do think it's important. Sorry to like answer the question in a roundabout way.
No, no, no. I want to know as much information. Um. So, like, what are like in your opinion? What are the pros of having social media? Like, kind of like a little like say top three things, and the cons of having social media for artists. Like top three things, pretty much.
If it's cool, I can just speak in my own experience.
Yeah.
I think one of the pros of social media is discovery. And
Hmm.
so, like, for example, I might put a TikTok that's like 15 seconds of me printing a shirt, and like we'll just suddenly get orders out of nowhere because people have seen that video and people are asking questions about the shirt. How well does it wash? Is this actually block printed, etc. So social media again is kind of one of those things that I think it would be foolish to not utilize whatsoever
Hmm.
nowadays if this is what you want to make your career out of. And so that discovery is awesome. A random like side story, I remember one of my favorite music producers, that's like in my top five. I followed him on Instagram, and he actually followed me back and was like, "Hey, um, I really like your work, and it's very emotional. Do you think we could collaborate on
Oh.
doing like album artwork?" And so, like, this person isn't super well known, but like, he definitely has some of his tracks just sort of spread out because people don't know what the name to it is. And
Hmm.
so, imagine like getting asked by your favorite artist or your favorite music artist if you can do album art with them. And so it was kind of a free project. They couldn't put it on Spotify, but we sort of combined forces. And so I got to work with him, and then it got even crazier. I found out he lived in the same neighborhood as
Oh
me.
my
And
god.
so, dude, it was like, what the hell is happening? And so not only did we get to collaborate on this, like we got to go to coffee shops together and like exchange ideas, and I found out he was also a graphic designer. And
Oh.
so as time went on, we just traded favors with each other. So I did album artwork for him, and then he helped me with some sound design for my Twitch. And it just
Oh.
blossomed. Like social media allowed that really cool opportunity to blossom. But the con side of it is just like, it's this is getting a little spicy. It's so easy for people with huge followings to tell people who are, not naturally concept artists, not like just trying to do the thing, don't care about the numbers, don't care about the numbers. Because truth be told, a lot of artists like myself, we're the sensitive types. We don't want to get hired by like AAA companies, or some of us just aren't cut out for concept art. And it's tough because they say again, like, don't care about the numbers, but it's also like, as an artist, you do have to pay attention to the
Hmm.
metrics. And so to me, um, it's like I've had some posts that got like some got only like 100 and others got like 1,000 plus interactions.
Right.
And when you get 1,000 plus interactions, it's true. Like you don't get your day doesn't get instantly better
Hmm.
sometimes just because something blows up. But you can also use that as a metric for like, okay, what are people looking for? What can I enjoy drawing that other people gravitate towards? So you kind of find that balance. And
Right.
so it's hard because it's like we do have to pay attention to those things and what people respond to. And so again, when you have these people that have been in the industry 20 years telling you not to care about the numbers, it's like I feel like that's a bit short-sighted because in a way, it's not like I need to put my self-worth into the
Hmm.
numbers, but I do have to care about it. Like I want to know how my art is getting shared around. I want to know what resonates with people. And so I think that at the worst case, like sometimes trying to care a little about it can snowball into caring too much about it, where
Hmm.
then like if you're not careful and you don't have a good support system of people like to talk to, then it just becomes all you have. And that's really dangerous. That doesn't just apply to art, that applies to any aspects of people trying to push their business online. And so it's biggest con for me is just trying to find that delicate balance of being able to analyze metrics, but not letting it like eat away at your soul, you know?
Mm. Like it's like when you make a post, it doesn't get a lot of likes, all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh god damn! I mean, it's this
Mhm.
artwork that I thought was really good, and so in hindsight, you probably like, oh, it's not that great. Like, and just feel
Yeah,
disappointed.
it's really tough. And then like for me, I almost think of like, for example, my Instagram as more of a gallery and less
Hmm.
just like me posting my life. Like I don't put any pictures of my face. I don't
Yeah.
like randomly share, oh, I walked here today. And some artists do that. And I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, like different styles, like go ahead, show people your life because that makes it humanizing. And
Hmm.
so I have this tendency that sometimes there's a post that doesn't do super well, and like my first instinct is like as I'm curating this online gallery wanting to take it away, and I'm like, no, 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 don't get in that habit. Like, yeah, you can control the way you want, but just like leave stuff up. Like, don't
Right.
have that be influenced by the success of the post. Like, because otherwise that kind of starts to seem egotistical. Of like, people didn't like it, so I'm just gonna get rid of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to like fall into that.
Yeah. I could see that how that could become toxic kind of thing, like kind of like sort of entitlement. kind of like I
Yeah,
deserve
maybe
all the
because I can be introspective and be like, yeah, I did that, and I don't want to do that anymore. Just like
yeah.
you just kind of got to accept that um, things are just like unpredictable. Sometimes you might get a lot of eyeballs on this work, sometimes you don't, but like don't let that get to you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the algorithm is so different on each platform. You don't know what's gonna blow up or not blow up. And speaking of that, how do you feel of like kind of like art trends and or trendy stuff that are coming out, and then artists just do those kind of thing and just going towards that to kind of grow on social media? Like the one I remember, like top of my head, was like the Resident Evil, the Lady Matricia trend that came out, and everybody was making artwork for that, right? And
Mhm.
do you think like sometimes artists need to do that kind of stuff? Maybe if they don't feel like really want to do it, but like they just want to do it of sake for marketing and promoting kind of thing.
I honestly think that like part of being an artist is embracing the suck and doing things not because you really, really want to do it,
Hmm.
but because you're trying to like put in that hard work into something that's not interesting to you to send your work out there. But I try not to do that because
Hmm.
like I say this a lot like in my Twitch stream. I didn't enjoy being in school and studying. Once I got out of
Mm.
school, I was like, hallelujah, like the clouds parted and everything. And so like as an artist, I really try to stay away from the trend of like following trends only because I think that it's going to make my post popular and not because I genuinely enjoy them. Like if the people contributing to that whole like Lady D trend genuinely like Resident Evil,
Right.
or maybe they didn't ever play Resident Evil games, but they kind of like her power and aesthetic,
Yeah.
like who's stopping you? Go ahead and do that. But honestly, I feel like the artists that aren't doing what they like and are only just jumping on the trend, like you're gonna feel some level of like dysphoria after a while because like you're putting all this work and effort into just trying to be seen instead of doing like what you like, you know. And so I personally don't have an issue with that because I'm like, screw it,
Right.
like I'm just drawing what I want. But I can see where that might be tough for certain people, where it's like if all you're drawing is just for only for the sake of trying to be you know, part of that bandwagon, that might be tough after a while. Like, you know.
Yeah. Because I feel like I'm old now, but like what I notice on TikTok right now is hyperrealism is like the biggest trend right now. Like everyone wants to do only hyperrealism. There's not that much like a lot of like different artwork as much. Maybe that's my algorithm, but I've seen like YouTube videos on it. I've seen like Twitter posts, like all this kind of stuff. Because I was very curious to like do a little research on it, like see what's going on. And yeah, I do feel it'll be like a maybe like a longer effect on it where people are gonna struggle to find something more unique to them. Because I don't think everybody's gonna enjoy only doing hyperrealism. I think just doing it for the
Right.
sake of trend, and that could be that become like the artist new age of artists can be like, okay, where do I go from now? Like, what am I gonna do now?
Yeah, I feel that. Um sorry, what was your question with that? Like what do
Oh,
you I feel about what?
so I was gonna go with questions like, how important is to an artist to find like their own art style or originality?
Like honestly, the way I see it is I want to be doing this until I die. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like I don't know if I'm answering this right, but it's like it's good to kind of get ideas from other things,
Right.
but ultimately if you don't enjoy it, that just sounds like a miserable existence. And so it's like if hyperrealism is popular now, and you're totally right, like I see it everywhere. Like especially on Reddit, like the ballpoint
Hmm.
pen images uh of like people who are submerged in water for some reason is really popular, but not just for some reason, it looks really cool.
Right.
But if I just feel exhausted with trying to follow like what's popular, it's kind of like just stick to your guns. I think
Hmm.
you can like learn something from it. But if you're a collage artist and you see that everything that's popular right now is hyperrealism, it's like you don't have to you don't have to follow that. But if it's helping you kind of know, if it's helping you navigate your career, like you can take notes from other artists who have used that to promote themselves. But like I again, like I just don't see myself drastically changing my style to kind of fit that trend. And sorry, I don't know if that answers the question at all,
No,
but
no, it pretty much because like it's pretty much like it pretty much goes to like mental kind of thing where
Mhm.
like kind of like you I like for me I get why people are doing it, but then I'm looking at like the long term, not short term. It's like I think in the long
Mhm.
term it's gonna really affect them, and it's kind of like tell them like you should just. I mean, if you like doing hyperrealism, you like doing it. I'm not saying you have to like.
Yeah,
I'm
like
not
have
saying
fun.
like yeah. I'm not just like saying like you have to force people to do something else. So I'm just saying like I think like suggesting kind of things like try something new, and maybe you end up liking that more, and maybe figure out a new style, or just
Yeah.
like something like that, and then it will help you in the future. Because I personally don't see the long term popularity of serialism, especially if everybody else is doing it. It's like oh everybody's doing it, so what's special about it?
Yeah. Like, hey, make that bank if you like doing that stuff and it's like
Hmm.
you find it nourishing to be involved in a time consuming activity. Like if that's like what speaks to your soul, like you have my support. Good for you. But for the other people looking at that being like, I want to get popular too, it's just like again, it's exactly what you said for the long term. It's like just focus on what you think you can do for the longest period of time instead of chasing all of these different design trends. But
Yeah,
sorry, I like probably said that 3 different times, three
no,
different ways. But
don't worry. This
you
is
know,
YouTube video. I can edit it. I'm just kidding. No. And also, okay, so we went for like social media, art, and everything, and the next one pretty much is like, how do you balance art and business?
uh, it's kind of funny because like my dad is a businessman, and so
Hmm.
we like talk about marketing and like metrics and analytics and all that stuff. So I honestly think that because like his personality is also part of my personality, like
Hmm.
I find business to kind of be a game and art to
Mm.
be like the relaxation. Art is like I can wake up in the morning, make coffee, and then I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing, and it's like great. But like business is, it's almost, and I hate the way that like introversion, extroversion is just overused nowadays. But like art is the introverted activity, business is the extroverted, where it's like
Hmm.
boom, 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 like it's really high octane and sparks. It just sparks, and it's just like a lot going at once. And so art allows me to just kind of have a bit of calm before the storm, and then with business balancing that, I kind of see it as a sort of game with numbers where it's kind of invigorating, but it's kind of like what I said before, that delicate balance. If there's too much of that, and not enough of the relaxation part of it, then it really messes me up. But I think the business part of it, balancing that, is actually like fun for me in
Hmm.
small degrees. So I'm still working on like for example, I have a friend, he goes by Steve Nigerian Art, and he's smart about it. He's like, Monday's my social media day. So I can draw
Mm.
any other day of the week, but I'm going to spend Monday doing all of like the tedious work, the mundane work, so that I just have the rest of the week open to not be distracted by that. And that is like kind of what I'm working on now, because the number game can be fun, but it's also like when you have it scattered throughout the week where it's getting in the way of other activities you could be doing like in a long shot, that's where it gets really tough. And that's something I struggle with, is trying to sort of divide my day out. And so I like working on that stuff. I'm just trying to better schedule it.
Yeah, that's actually gonna be my next question. Was like, is your time management good?
It's getting better. I'll say
Yeah, man.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, like I used to stream on Twitch 3 days a week,
Hmm.
and that's when you talk to like people for 4 hours straight, even if you're in the comfort of like your room,
Hmm.
surrounded by all of your art supplies, that's like draining,
Hmm.
and so like it's kind of tough because it's like Twitch is part of my income, but you have to sort of weigh out the pros and cons and being like, well, having streaming 3 days a week and also just like talking nonstop during that point makes it tough to return back to art. And so
Right,
I had to
right.
make a compromise where I'm like, if my goal is to make more art this year, I already have like partnership on Twitch. Like I've met a goal, which is super cool, but I
Hmm.
do have to cut back on streaming days. So I have even like think about like even 4 extra hours taken out of my week, like is game changing for me. And
Mm.
so it's like me even making a small change like that in my schedule has freed me up significantly because it removes an extra day of preparing and making sure the technology is like working as it should. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of right now, being in my almost fourth year of doing art full time, I still struggle with like the scheduling and all of that stuff, but time management wise, it's just kind of it's still tough, but it gets better. It's just like kind of each month you might make a subtle change to see how it works. And if it doesn't, you can go back to normal. And then just slowly, time by time, you can see how making small adjustments might benefit you in the long run. And so I feel like it's just been a constant process, but I'm getting so much better at like learning how not to burn myself out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could feel that because like I was doing Twitch for a while. They're like 5 days or so, but I turned it down to 3 days because I was like, I think I'm using too much time on Twitch, even though it's cool, community environment kind of stuff. But um, for artists, it's not as big compared to other communities and stuff. Like it's just not as big and all that, especially for growth and all that. Even though that's not everything, but that's got, like you said, sometimes you got to think about the numbers and got to figure out your business kind of thing. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When you cut out days, it does free so much time. You're like feel less stressful. You just stream when you want to stream, kind of thing. And if you want to do that, and it gives you a lot more time just to do like you said, more time to do other things that you really want to focus on, and actually not. So what for me, half-ass it. Like to finish certain
Okay.
things.
Sometimes half-assing it in one aspect can like improve another though. So
Yeah.
it's as long as it's like as long as you can prevent that burnout monster from approaching, it's like that's just what you got to do is just make subtle changes here and there.
Well, since like we kind of already talked like the business and the time management, how does all this kind of influence your pricing when if you do commissions, so artwork, stuff like that?
So I've actually I'm in a really comfortable place right now where I can say like, hey, I can't dedicate this time to a commission. I used to like, especially the first year I started getting on Twitch and people saw more and more of my work. Um, I felt like I was constantly chasing commissions, and that makes it
Mm,
hard to kind of work on stuff yourself because it's like it's guaranteed money almost. And
yeah,
so, with like charging for commissions nowadays, I've started to come to the realization that's like charging commissions isn't just trying to like get a low price to be like, please notice me, please notice me. Um, I have it at a much higher price nowadays. It's not because like I think I'm Da Vinci or something, but like it's taken me several years of being like self-taught to get to the point where I see myself now. It's like it's taken my education in graphic design that influenced my art to get to this point where am now. And it's not just like charging people for the skill you have. It's also like time is precious to me.
yeah,
I do not have a lot of time to work on commissions anymore because they take me from everything else I'm trying to accomplish. So it's like, in a way, it's like your your price is not just your ability as an artist. It's I am moving everything out of the way to do this work for you. And that's not to sound like all like self-inflated or whatever. It's just kind of like I've priced it I'm much higher than where I started when I began because it's just sort of like, hey, like if I'm gonna shove everything out of the way, then I want it to um, work at a rate where it's like worth doing.
yeah.
If that makes sense. And there's a lot of people that will contact you and they're like, I want you to make me like a Vegeta profile picture.
Oh
And
my
you're like,
god.
and it's like, there people can do that. There's folks out there that can fulfill that need.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's like, well, I'm trying to, submit my art to galleries and do all these things that are a little bit more intense. I can't stop to do like a 4-hour commission with like having to figure out contracts and setting aside time and doing this and this and this and communication. Like that's another thing with commissions, so not just drawing, it's communication, it's problem solving
yes,
for certain people. And so that like I've kind of figured out that aspect. There's other things too, not just stuff with commissions, but the pricing for my products is a little bit less it's a little bit less rigid where I have certain for example, my block prints, right?
hmm
So my block prints, my relief prints, as you may also call them, they're at a lower margin than people would expect. So, for example, it might take me. Some people can screen print T-shirts like 180 in 1 hour. For
hmm
me, I can like block print maybe 10 shirts or slightly more in 1 hour,
hmm
and people are like, bro, why aren't you charging like $75 for a shirt? And I'm like, and so it's funny because it's like commissions are up here, but like prices for stuff like shirts are down here. And part
Right.
of my like kind of personal philosophy about that is like I want my art to be accessible to some
Right.
degree.
Right.
That's like the
Right.
art I put out. And so I might have a lower price margin for t-shirts, but then my prints, which still require like a lot of time and ability to make, but are less per unit, I can kind of adjust the pricing of everything to make it where it's worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that having a lower cost of like the relief prints might be offset by the fact that I can still sell more of some of these smaller units that are easier to produce. And so it's just kind of like adjusting the numbers and seeing like what um, what works in the long run and still again being accessible to certain people. And then there's other things like selling originals. I'm not going to skip out on selling originals, especially if it's like a carved block, because
Mm-hmm.
with those things I'm like, this carved block isn't just like I gouged some marks out and it's done. Like I've made potentially thousands of prints with this,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to skimp out on that. And so it's kind of funny because like just each item and each service I provide, it's just instead of just kind of deciding it has to be one way and applying that across the board, it's just again adjusting everything so it works like in the big picture.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I was gonna like, have you ever done a commission where you had to talk about rights or anything like that to a certain character or anything?
A lot of them actually, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like some of the work, it's like I transfer the rights to. That's kind of more with like graphic design. For example,
Yeah.
I
Right.
transfer the rights to the person as soon as it's done, and then some of it, it's like, hey, if it gets canceled, I retain the rights. I'm
Okay.
working with an author right now who wrote a short story where it's like the copyright is still mine, but each produced work will attribute you as like the source of the inspiration, as, like since you created the short story that this is based on. And so I feel like that's just kind of natural with a lot of commissions I take.
Okay. How important is to like an artist when they're gonna like talking with a person with communication, to like put everything out instead of trying to hide some certain things or kind of feel nervous to tell them like a price or this is the rise kind of thing. Because I heard like because I've been like talking with a lot of artists and everything, and I heard like different stories. Some people are a little bit nervous to kind of like tell them all everything up front because they feel like they put all the information. They're like, oh, that's too much information. I'm out. You're giving me too much. And then it's like, oh, you're not giving me enough. Oh, you never told me this. Like so many things just pop up. So like, how do you think it's like the best way to kind of handle that?
How to handle like
Like
sorry. So
communication and commission. Like to like let people know like, oh, this is not just personal use. This is also commercial use. So okay, so this is the price for this, and this is the price for that.
yeah, it's I've kind of had to Frankenstein together an agreement
Hmm.
to create it. So I go on a lot of like legal sites that have certain areas of the site where they have examples of different contracts depending on if it's like you're taking a picture, you're doing like a photo shoot of somebody, or it's you're selling like fine art. And so I kind of just comb through the internet and go on a lot of these legal sites and um take some example agreements, for example. Take some of these template agreements and just cluster them together in a way that makes sense to me, and that it's not just like the jargon you have to sift through. It explains why it's worded that way and
Hmm.
why you have to be careful about using these terms instead of this. And so I honestly just kind of in the beginning, not knowing what I was doing, I just spliced a ton of things together and then over time refined them. And it helps that some of the clients that I took earlier on didn't like represent this massive like entity or anything.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
mostly between friends, and so that starting out kind of low key that way allowed me to sort of refine it over time where now I can just like submit an agreement and not feel that I'm just kind of throwing a dart in the dark. So again, it's just the Frankenstein of
Yeah. Yeah.
several other agreements put together, because it's like it's not like I'm gonna have time to consult a lawyer and be like, oh, does
Yeah.
this look right? And so just being upfront and then laying out some of the terms before I send the agreement to be like, heads up. So if they want to back out, they can just ghost me. Yeah.
I mean that.
So
I mean that happens a lot in this kind of thing that we
yeah,
do.
it doesn't really bother. Like I'm a sensitive person. It doesn't even really bother me anymore because I was like,
Oh
well, that
yeah.
made
Yeah.
me. So, yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, because when I do commissions, I just tell 'em, everything on front. I don't hide anything. I was like, this is personal or commercial. This is my price. This is my price. Take it or leave
Mhm.
it. Not like in
Yeah.
a rude way, but like you know what I mean. Like just tell them
Yeah.
like this is my price. And if they don't
Well,
want
again,
it, it's like
they're
there's a
buying
lot.
your time. So,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like you can find other artists that are willing to do this kind of thing, but this is my price kind of thing. And um, yeah. So Sim's got like you got like the influence your art and everything. Um, Speaking of friends, have you ever feel like you had a compromise or you feel like pressure to do like a special price or like or something just went bad because they thought they're like they're friends and all that kind of thing? Because I had an artist who did a commission for a friend and he lost a 7 year friendship because of money. Because they ghosted him, did not pay them. They did the work, but they did not pay them
yeah.
and stuff. So it's like pretty much the question is like, do you do any like commissions for friends or artwork for friends, and then do you just treat it as a business kind of thing, or you something sometimes you compromise certain things?
Um, there's times where, like, for family, I have like Ohana discount, as we call it. And so, like, I have certain friends that it's not just like they're done with the artwork, and it's like thanks. Like, these were some of the people that supported me in like the very
Hmm.
first months of me being in career. So it's not even just like having a rate, lowering the rate because I like you. It's like these were some of my biggest cheerleaders when I
Hmm.
started out, my biggest like promoters and stuff like that. And so for my family and friends, like I will have adjust a rate just simply because I've known them and that we've
Hmm.
established trust, and they've also in turn like done things for me. And so um, there's a little bit of adjusting on that. I didn't have a fallout, but I had a very tough conversation with a family member because we there were some details that were communicated to a different artist slash designer that they
Mm.
thought were I already knew. And so with one of my loved ones, there was a lot of headbutting and like raising of voices about I don't understand how much more clear I could be about this, and then me being like, I have no idea what we're talking about. And it led to a misunderstanding where what they thought was information I already had wasn't even sent to me. It was sent to a different person. And so it was a little bit of like, and normally I come from a family where we like talk through everything. Like
Right.
we don't leave stuff on the table. We're like, this sucks, but we have to deal with it right now. And that was like one of the few situations where it's like, this sucks and we just gotta leave it in the past. And so that's like the
Mm.
biggest um because it was just both sides were kind of sassy in the situation. So it was like,
Right.
well,
Right.
got that behind us and I'm on great terms with this person still, but we agreed that it's like we're just not really gonna we're not gonna have this part of our life anymore of
Right. 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 Right.
doing certain pieces of work. So that's the worst that's happened. Beyond that, things have been pretty okay.
Well, speaking of like kind of, I guess conflict, have you had any conflict with commissions with a person before? Whether like pricing stuff, information stuff, or just ghosted kind of thing? Because I had this, I know I'm using a lot of examples because with all the stories, I had this artist who got paid for a commission and they ghosted him. Like they got paid, but they just left. It's like, okay, all right, I got paid.
Yeah, that's odd to me. It's like I'd almost be like, "What the hell?" But it's like, well, you put money in my pocket, so I would almost like wonder if that person dealt with like a really intense life situation, if that were the
Hmm.
case. But like, you can only speculate.
Yeah.
I most of the ghosting that I deal with happens as soon as like I give them my rates.
Right.
Or
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had so many people at conventions approach me saying, "We want you to do a comic book cover for us." And some have followed through, but then like their life kind of took a different turn, and so that's fine.
Right.
But because they were communicative, there's some people that's like, "Yeah, I tell them my rates, and they're like, "We're gonna contact you anyway. It sounds good. This is the level of detail we want," and then they don't do it. That's happened way more times than I thought. Because I'm like, "Dang it, you guys! Like, I'd love to do a comic book cover, but you
Yeah.
see my rates, and instead of saying, "Well, think about it," you said, "We're gonna contact you," and then you don't, and it's like, at this point, whenever people at conventions who claim to be part of certain companies say, like, um, oh yeah, we really want you to be our artist. Like I'm gonna assume 99% of cases that they're not actually interested because I'm just like,
I
I get
don't
that you
get
guys are
that.
trying to be professional and be ambassadors to this company whom you represent, but too often these people acting super professional, like just and they, like it's in their right to just not follow through. It's not
Right,
like we've
right, right.
agreed to anything. It's just kind of like I roll my eyes because I'm like, okay. Um, what else though? Uh, any conflicts?
Well, I mean,
Um,
with art boots too, like any I don't any weirdos or anything like that. Any people other like I don't know, maybe somewhat beefs with other artists and conventions. Uh, I heard a few stories, so
there's
I'm just curious.
it's unfortunate because like I had this realization that everybody like especially when you begin like working, you know how there's like that stereotype of like the starry-eyed employee who's like in
Mhm.
their early 20s and
Yeah.
like I'm gonna make a change in this company and then like as time goes on they get soiled like everybody else does. And so oh crap, what analogy was I leading that into? And so it's like that kind of person is usually like, high school is in the past. We're adults now. We're not going to be over dramatic or anything. And it's like
Right.
it's not even a high school thing. People just like suck sometimes. And so I've
Mhm.
had certain situations where I've been told like, "Hey, be careful of that person. They've been iffy to them." And I'm not two-faced. It's just kind of like there's some stuff where I've been warned about an artist maybe being a little bit exploitive where it's like I'll just like kind of keep a poker face but just know um be careful.
Yeah.
Like you're only getting one side of the story, so you have
Yeah.
to be careful about that. And then there's some really upsetting interactions I've had with people who were potential business partners and then they started like flirting with me. And I'm like,
Um.
excuse like really like dude. So think about how ridiculous it is. Like I aside from like this interview and Twitch, I do not post pictures of my face on social media.
Right.
It's about the art. I'm not trying to make a huge statement with it. I'm just like not comfortable with that. But I
Mhm.
do post like my face cam on Twitch so people have a figure to like talk to, I
Mhm.
suppose. Um, and so I think it makes it extra ridiculous that some people you talk to them at a convention for 5 minutes. There's probably hundreds of other people you talk to for 5 minutes. And obviously I enjoyed those interactions and I wish those people the best. And then they take that as, oh, you're interested in me. And like, and then they start asking you really uncomfortable questions and start
um.
messaging at 2 a.m. Hey, you up? You up? And I'm like, would you be doing
What?
this if I was like a 6'2", 200-pound man? Like this is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, that is kind of weird. Messaging you at 2 a.m. Hey,
yeah,
you up? Hey, we want to talk about art. Like that's like
right. Especially when it's like a business contact, like whom I've contacted for like supplies for my art, where it's like, hey, they've provided a sort of in for me to speak with other people that help me do what I do, and I'm like, that was really kind of you, thank you. And then it's like, okay, so we're like friends, we're like wink wink friends now, right? Like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? That it's like, hey, this will look cute on you, and you're like, whoa,
wait, what?
whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess like instead of going like a natural progression between like associates to friendship, I guess you just kind of skip the whole thing and just try and go right to it.
Yeah,
That is,
it's really not cool, and honestly, it's affected the way I interact with people, or it's
yeah,
like more and more, it's like I keep dealing with these situations, I keep thinking I'm gonna put a barrier forward, but it's like I still want to like genuinely interact with people at events. It's just like I don't really get where the whole "Oh, you're nice to me, that means you're flirting with me" thing comes from. So it's just
yeah,
like I just have to roll my eyes and just be on guard. That's like it sucks that it happens like that, but like it's always gonna happen, and you need to know like what your boundaries are.
right, right. I mean, cause I mean, what are you supposed to say? Really, like, get the hell out of here. Stop talking to me, like being rude and a convention with everybody else, like probably waiting in line for your stuff. Like, it's gonna look really bad. You know, so
Yeah,
it's like, what are you supposed to do, really? Like, you can't just send them off, like, be super rude. I mean, that's how I guess I don't get too dark, but like, I guess that's why some stalkers and conventions kind of take advantage of that because you can't just tell them like, get the f out of here, like, like, stop bothering me. It's a weird thing. It's like they know
yeah.
it and it
Like,
sucks.
keep your sorry for interrupting you.
Not good.
It's like, yeah, you have to keep interaction at a minimum and like
Mhm.
not feed them like any material that they could bounce off of. Like, I'm not going to ask you, like, if you've been creepy to me or you've been rude to my friends, I'm not going to be like, how's your day? Oh, like, what panels did you stop by? It's like, nope, if you want something from this table, you can have it, but I'm not gonna give you a conversation to bounce off of. Like,
Yeah. Like no personal
this
thing.
is
Just
just business side of me. There is no human side of me at that point. So it's
yeah.
kind of like, yep,
Um.
just have to keep a poker face and just keep all that interaction to a minimum.
Yeah. I guess this is what sucks about I guess social media and conventions in general. There would just be one person just taking it too far, or just
Yeah.
kind of like they got an in or some kind. Anyways, uh. so so yeah. Speaking of all that kind of stuff, now that pretty much how important is a brand for an artist nowadays? Like, since we have social media, business, conventions, kind of thing. How important is the branding now? Like to have like something like to kind of put out to people and kind of showcase to people.
I guess it helps to just draw a circle around what you think are the most important aspects of your art,
Hmm.
and being able to kind of cluster that together, compact it into like a logo or a sort of recognizable color scheme or a way to present yourself at shows. But to me, I guess I haven't really thought about that because again, I came from like a graphic design background.
Hmm.
And so branding was just kind of something that it's like I didn't really think about doing it or not doing it. It was just
Hmm.
like, yeah, of course. I like the color neon pink. So I'm gonna have
Yeah,
neon
yeah.
pink. Like I do like relief printing, so I'm gonna use like a sort of letterpress looking typography or typeface, I mean, to add to it. And so I think some artists would really benefit from a sort of at least a bit of branding because it can help you sort of boil sort of a get all the noise away and like kind of create a first impression for your peers and the people who may be buying your art. So I think like artists should look into a bit of branding, but how far to go with that I think just varies person to person.
Hmm.
Um, it was just not really something I guess I had to think about because that's like what they taught us from day one, you know?
Well, I mean, this can be kind of like a two-parter thing, but how important do you think art schools kind of thing is important now, or you think people just learn it by themselves, like YouTube college?
Right? I've had some friends go to art school and they didn't have good things to say about it. If I found out like and then I have friends that did go to an art school and they're mind-blowingly good. So I'm assuming they probably already had a good foundation
Hmm.
in art and then that education allowed them to blossom. And so it's really hard because I've seen both sides of the coin. It's just become more and more unfortunate that education nowadays is so expensive. And so I do think that like maybe some of the responsibility should lie if you're going to be a self-taught artist should lie into like educating yourself.
Hmm.
Um, just like doodling and doodling and doodling and doodling, but like take it upon yourself to maybe go to like life drawing classes or buy a textbook on like anatomy and like go through it day by day or like kind of get into reading. And so I don't think that art education is, from what I've seen, super necessary to having like a successful career. I mean, like technically, graphic design and art are more cousins. They're not like flip
Yeah.
sides of the coin. And so, like my graphic design absolutely helped me with like the branding and learning how to kind of create like compositions that your eyes could sort of follow with. But it's also like most of my art I feel comes from that like kid that doodled in the margins. So I just think for art school, um, it can work for some people. It doesn't for others. But with college just being so expensive nowadays,
Mm.
it's like you should maybe consider if you have the ability to be a self starter and educating yourself. Like, because if you think you have the drive to be able to take part in like some of these online courses that are taught by concept artists where you do have a group of people who are also signed up for that course to critique you and be part of that, I think like that sounds great. you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
so it's yeah, sorry, my answer for that is a little bit fuzzy, but it's just there seems to be options for everybody, so maybe don't dive into the most expensive one to start with unless you truly believe that that is going to be help you excel in your career, I suppose.
Yeah. Like, yeah, you could just like take it personal and just start studying something that you want to learn, kind of thing, or go to college for that. Like, if I,
Yeah.
because like that's why I have like people have art books or watch a YouTube video. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do I work this program or something like that? And then because like, but the person needs to be willing by themselves to do that, like studying kind of thing, instead of like going to a place. Can you? I won't say force, but you're like, there's a reason why you're there. You know what I mean? Instead of just doing it on your own personal time, like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to do this. I'm gonna search it up. So I guess it depends on a person.
Just kind of like what do you think is going to best?
Yeah, I take it like a day by day. I was like, if I take a new commission and I'm like kind of like not 100% familiar, what can I do? I just study. That's what I do. I read a book or
There
I
you go.
go to a YouTube video. It's like studying for a test, but for me it's fun because art.
Yeah, I actually like it's kind of going back to like my whole school experience. I freaking hated school. I did really well in school, but I hated it.
Yeah.
And so it's like kind of like what you said, because I don't like studying, which I know hinders me, like absolutely. I use commissions and projects to be like, well, like, oh, I have to draw like a ton of the human body for this. I'm gonna go on YouTube and look up a video on how to draw a rib cage, or download a 3D program that allows me to rotate it
Yeah.
differently so that I can force myself to study for that specific thing. It's like, oh, my perspective is still a little bit shady. Well, I'm gonna look up like 3 different tutorials on perspective and exercises that'll like kind of um, help me refine my skills specifically for this thing. And so that just seems to be the mode I work in.
And then I guess like the second part was any stories about the teachers?
Like in my
College.
university.
Yeah, college.
Oh,
Like, were they good, bad? Because, like you said, I also heard a lot of bad things, but it comes from the teachers where they don't really care or they just don't really put much effort on certain things. That's like just my end, but like, have you
yeah.
had any experience? Like, good teachers, bad teachers? Kind of like, eh.
Felt like it was all kind of new and shiny to me my first year.
Hmm.
Starting to take graphic design courses because they were really good at like teaching me the programs and the basics. But as time went on, and like I want to like express like I don't take my education for granted. It prepared me for the real world, you know.
Hmm.
And so as much as I can be like, oh, I hated it, it's like, but it made me part of what I am today. And so I, as time went on, the courses started to get more experimental, which I don't think helped me
Mm.
learn. And they also were pointing to this, like, of all places, a community college that produced some really, really intense designers who studied at those programs and were constantly being like, but they're doing better, but they're doing better, but they're doing better. And it was like all this comparison. And like, well, if you think so, teach us better. Like, we're not just like overnight gonna wake up and be like, haha, like, look where I am now, you know. So I was a little bit bitter that the department was changing the more I became educated. So they're kind of filtering out the other teachers who are like teaching like obsolete things. Like we were spending an entire week on like crop marks that became an automatic function like added to a program. So it's like, why are we learning how to make crop marks when these programs are just you click a button and it applies, you know? And
Nowadays,
so
yeah,
I was a
yeah.
little bitter about that stuff. So it was kind of like it was on the other side of the spectrum. It's like on one hand, you were learning from a teacher who's teaching obsolete methods, or professor, pardon me, and then you're replacing them with these other teachers who are almost like too abstract and experimental, where it's like we don't have somebody teaching us to use the program anymore. Like they sent us back when Lynda was a thing, lynda.com. They were sending us Lynda courses as homework and just being like just showing us documentaries like in the front part of the day, and I was like, why can't we just like do this work in class? And then like making us like do like these scavenger hunts for things to incorporate in a project, and I'm like, bro, like I just want to like so I'm happy that like I had some really cool professors, especially like in my first and second years, who they're like, we know that you know nothing of this, so we're gonna they were gonna help you establish like a very strong foundation to bounce off of. But then like that part was great. It's just it started to get really convoluted in the end. And so it sucked, but you just kind of got to shrug your shoulders and be like, "Hey, I found jobs after that, so what can you do?" You know.
Yeah, yeah. How important is for an artist to kind of experiment with the art and kind of like try other mediums, try different styles, kind of like get out the comfort zone?
I really think that other artists should try that. In fact, I heard from another professional, they're like, study art, but take a moment to like take 20% of that time to look at art that you otherwise are not interested in, which I thought was
Mm.
like, oh, that's like a really cool experiment. And so like I love like doing pen and ink and minimal color, but it's like not even just like, oh, I do traditional art. Now I'm going to look at this colorful concept art. Like walk through a museum, like watch videos of like people sculpting, look at abstract art, fine art, like installations.
Mm.
It's because like if you just stay in your little circle, it's kind of like the same ideas between you and other artists that like that stuff are just going to get recycled and just evolve into something that like only is appealing to this small group of people. Like step outside of that, smell the roses, And so I think it is really important for people to kind of get out of their comfort zone and explore other mediums because it's like again, if you just kind of stay in that like that little cyclone of inspiration, like you're not going to get much from anything else. And so hilariously, like I'm not like I'm not a shining example of this. I still kind of stay within my comfort zone. But I
Right.
started like watching videos of people doing sculpting, and I was like seeing how they were carving out like the
Mm.
form literally, and kind of looking at that and being like, huh. So like I feel inspired by this sculptor. It's so different than what I do, but the way the forms look so different when you see it in a 3D space was just very intriguing to me. And um, even like I just think that even if you're not going to dive directly into that medium, like at least dip your toes and see what happens because
Test it out.
uh, yeah, it's like even if I'm still the same artist doing the same things I was a year ago, at least you can draw from other artists you may have not discovered prior,
Hmm.
and then you can kind of add that to um, your collection so that you're not just like running out of ideas or just doing the same thing over and over again, not
Yeah,
evolving.
yeah, yeah. Because when we speak earlier, that's how I kind of treated inking. Since
Mhm.
like I was mostly a color artist, inspired by graffiti art kind of thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, I want to get better. What am I lacking? Oh, my outlining and my details.
Mhm.
Where do I need to look? Oh, I need to look at ink artists like yourself. Like I looked at some of your work and looked at how you do your details, and it's very inspiring. So it's like when I look at, yeah, it makes sense to like go outside what you usually look at and like see what they're doing and kind of see if you could transfer it to your own style and see what works. Kind of like experimenting.
Exactly. Yeah, graffiti art, I can definitely like see the fingerprints of that in your work now that I think about it. And it's great because like if you didn't have that to look at,
Mhm.
what you're doing now may have been very different, or maybe you would have enjoyed it less because you didn't have other things to like pull from.
Yeah, yeah, I would have just gotten bored or something.
Maybe.
Because I mean, I like looking at other things that just like kind of gets out of what I usually do. Like
Mhm.
I like looking at Capcom art. It's some of my favorite art of all time. Even though I don't do that style, right? Like I don't do that kind of blends kind of thing. I still take inspiration of what they do and kind of see if I could apply a little bit to my style and kind of keep
Yeah.
developing it. And so that's what I take like a little piece that I like and then bring it to my style. Just like inking, I like what they're doing, take the inking thing and put it into my thing, you know? And it's kind of like a puzzle kind of thing, like keep developing my style to make it better.
Yeah, good for you, man.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it makes sense what you said. Yeah, just kind of comfort zone. Look at other things and make your own blue ocean. Have you heard that before? Because like what because what you explained was like how everybody's get on their own thing. It becomes a red ocean where everybody's just all in one place, and the blue
Okay.
ocean is like more where like just very few people there, and it's kind of like a more niche kind of thing, and you kind of do your own thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Um, but yeah, so speaking of all that, how do you avoid artist block?
Eh, it's always gonna be there. Um,
Yeah.
I started to view it differently because, like, I guess I don't always deal with artist block. I deal with artist rage, where I just look at what I've done, and it's like I'm mad at it. Like what? Like I'm like a stage mom. Why can't you be better? You know? And so, or I'm like looking at what other artists my age like have done, and I'm just like, you know. And so I don't deal with artist block as much as artist rage, which is just the same but more like aggro. And I had a friend say something to me that two friends saying different things, and one they were like, if you're getting frustrated at your art, that's like prior to a growth spurt. And I've
Mhm.
noticed every time I've paid attention to the fact that I've gotten frustrated, I've like had a mild breakthrough after that. Or I've started to do something else where I was like, wow, I felt like I did that in like half the time. And
Mhm.
so I can't rely on that always being the case. But if you're frustrated, that means like you're desiring growth and you just
Mhm.
like need to spark that somehow. And so that having a little bit of inspiration there of knowing that it's like, hey, this might be the start of me trying something completely new because I just hate being in this like same area for so long. That's a little bit helpful, but then I had a friend that was like, which again for me doing my business and block printing and having to sometimes study analytics on social media, like that can even make the art rage worse because you feel like you should be spending time on the art and not on all of these other things that are you wish were arbitrary. And so another buddy was just like, okay, draw once a day, but it seems like a lot of these other artists are like by drawing once a day, like have this finished picture by the end of the day. They're like, even if it's a stick figure, just draw.
Mhm.
And every single time I'm going through art rage, if I begin my day where I know it's going to be hard that entire day to it's going to be hard to fit in drawing then starting out the beginning of the day with a little bit of coffee and just like drawing something like weirdly abstract, it's almost like exercising. It's like you didn't really want to do it in the beginning, but it makes you feel better and makes you more comfortable with the art day by day so that it's almost like you're just giving yourself a little bit of energy to work past the block. And so I know that sounds super roundabout, but it's like art block is art rage and getting over art rage just by sometimes just drawing simple art so that I get more and more comfortable with it that then I can kind of jump past that discomfort, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that. So we pretty much got through like everything. And then I got optional questions if you want to answer or not.
Sure.
How do you feel about high end art? Like, do you like because there's more stuff coming out more now than ever. Scams, kind of like is this actually really good art? You know, of course, art is subjective, right? Art is subjective, but how do you feel about high end art, gallery art, kind of thing? Since you talked about
You
it a
know,
little
if
bit.
if people aren't bluffing and they look at like an artist's work of like a square and they actually feel something from it, like maybe it's the way that they've mixed the paints or whatever. Like I'm not going to tell that person you shouldn't feel that certain way about that art, you
Hmm.
know. There's like weird art that like to me is off-putting and then to somebody else it might speak volumes to them. I'm not really too bothered by the art.
Hmm.
The stuff that just kind of seems like as call a rich person's Venmo, where it's like you have this like tray of cigarettes that you're selling for 30,000 bucks and a person buys it. That like I roll my eyes at that 'cause I'm like, "Man, like, really?" You know, it's just kinda seems like a ton of rich people just throwing money at each other, but there's also some stuff that's really cool
Hmm.
and odd. I just think that that's kind of the beauty and the blessing and the curse about art is that the thing about art is like you don't have to apply boundaries to it. Like with commercial art, yeah, like you have to be a little more palatable, but like that's like if you were to say no as artists you can only do this and this and this and this, um, that like removes the entire fun for it. But I also know that the fact that art doesn't have limits also allows this other part of it that where people take advantage for it.
Hmm.
People take advantage of it, and you're just like, dude, come on, this is like a total scam. And so it's one of those things where it like sucks, but like, what can you do about it? You know what I
Right,
mean? And
right, right.
so it's just like I think people like they're entitled to be opinionated and say no, that's total like BS. It's always going to be there. People can always call out that stuff, but I try not get too distracted by it.
Okay, okay. Well, it kind of goes to the next one. How do you feel about NFTs?
Actually feel pretty neutral about them.
Okay.
It's most of my friends that, like, talk about NFTs are like, "Oh, it's just like a JPEG." I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, it's not." Like,
No, yeah.
I don't know how to describe it in words, but it's more complicated than that. Like, I think also with art having no boundaries, I do see it as, like, the next evolution of creativity. Not saying that everything's going to sort of bottleneck into this one
Yeah.
thing, but it's kind of like if art's evolving, it's kind of more of just like a branch going off.
Right.
And so I think that if people are doing really cool things with NFTs and they're making them interactive, or I've heard of this one NFT that the people who purchased it with it would start to like evolve into something over time, kind of like the game Spore or whatever. I'm
Hmm.
like, that's
Yeah.
super cool. Like that takes
Right.
probably a lot of effort and that makes it like something cool to be part of. But I see cool parts of it like that,
Hmm.
where I'm like, I'm not into that. Not a crypto pro or whatever, but like I know that's still different. But like I'm not into that kind of thing, but like I can see where people can use it as an outlet to do something really interesting. But
Right.
it's just flooded with a ton of people who legit think like, yeah, I'm just going to like make 16 pixels and be like, that'll be give me 600 like equivalent of $600 for that. Or it's kind of like again that previous question before, some people just think that like, oh yeah, I could totally make easy money from this, and I'm just and so again, I
Yeah.
feel super neutral about NFTs. I'm just kind of like, every art medium there's going to be scammers, so it's
Yeah.
just like.
Yeah. I mean, intentional art as someone stealing your art and selling it for themselves.
Mhm. Oh, like that stuff, absolutely. Again, part of the exploitive stuff that is despicable. Like, and it's unfortunate how much of like a virus that has spread, but that's where I can see definitely like the negative opinion of NFTs is like, really, bro, you just like took a screenshot and put that up. Like, that's not just like low effort. That's deplorable, and so that stuff like absolutely call it out.
Have you ever experienced someone stealing your art before, or potentially?
No,
Okay.
but I had this person, and hilariously, the account doesn't exist anymore, so, like, I'm not sending, like, pitchforks to it. There was this account called Full Metal Bitch on Instagram,
Oh my
and
god.
okay, I know, right? It's like, if you know how the story is gonna end. And so they shared a ton of art they found on ArtStation, but when they credited me, they didn't tag my username, and I was just like, "Hey, thanks for sharing my art. Just as a heads up, like, could you please tag my username because I'm the creator of it?" And they said, "Yeah, but I'll ask for a fee for that." And I
What?
was like, "Yeah, exactly." And then none of their posts had tags on it, and I was like, "I created this art. Why are you asking me to pay you for proper attribution?" And they say that's how marketing works, which I was like, I didn't even
No.
know what to do at this point. So like I just like created stories and sent messages to my friends and my peers like, this is what's going on. Here's a screenshot. Report this person. Like that's that's absolutely not okay. And instead what happened is I couldn't report them because at that point they got rid of the image, so I couldn't like do a
Yeah.
copyright claim, anything like that. But I kept notifying artists about this, especially some of the artists that created that, and it kind of snowballed. Where more and more people started to realize um, that they were taking advantage of artists' work and expecting them to pay $20 just to get their stupid name tag, just to add an at symbol. And so they got absolutely obliterated in every comment, and they started shutting down comments. They started getting reported, and then hilariously, they did start tagging artists, but at that point, they got
It
so
was
much
too
negative
late.
that they just abandoned ship. And then I checked back at the count again because I was like, what happened to those guys? And then the person tried to like turn it into some sort of graphic design brand. And I'm like,
Too late. So
I was just like, of course you did, dude. And so I've never had like my work copied specifically by another
right.
artist. But I've definitely like had my 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 attribution like held at ransom, which I thought was completely ridiculous. But it sucks because like that it's not just like one account doing that. It probably
Yeah.
happens so many times, and so it's just at that point I was still had like virtually no following, so stuff like that feels more intense
Hmm.
because you actually do feel like it's having an effect. In some way, I think if that happened nowadays, I probably wouldn't have responded and just like reported them, just like you're annoying. But I kind of overreacted back then.
I
So
mean, honestly, I don't think was it like a big account with a bunch of followers, or it was just a
there were
account.
like Sorry, there's like a spider on my window. Anyway, they had like 30,000 people viewing the art, and so they have a large.
Oh,
So and again, like they weren't uploading any of their other stuff. They were just like populating it from ArtStation. So again, like if that happened to me today, I wouldn't have interacted with them at all. I would have
right,
just been like,
right.
"That's mine."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like lately I haven't had as many friends deal with that stuff, and I don't know. It's because like if you rile up the internet, you will feel the
Yeah,
fury.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's still happening out there. I just think that now that I've
Um,
seen some of the darker sides of the art internet, there's just different ways I'd approach these situations.
I mean, there's a lot of bots right now on Instagram where it's like, oh,
Right.
send your art to this gallery, send your art to this. Like, sometimes I get
Oh
those.
my
I'm like,
gosh, disgusting.
I have to keep deleting them. Like, not almost every post, but I'm like, when they pop up, I'm like, freaking annoying bot. Like, stop doing this kind of thing.
They are, and like I don't know how organic it is, but it's like I always laugh when it's like um, submit your art so we may consider it for this page that has 100,000 followers. And like, let me tell you, I've had my art shared to pages that had 100,000 followers, and like, not through that, just because like the person liked my work and was like, "Hey, check out their work." It really doesn't make. I wish I could tell this to like newer artists. Like, it doesn't make an impact. Like, you're
Yeah,
just kind of part of an already huge gallery. It's very nice for people to, promote you, but it's just like for accounts that are arguing. But if you submit to us, you may get seen. Like, don't you want 100,000 people to look at you? It's like, no, I'm fine. Like, I've had that happen, and it doesn't make again a huge impact. So just like,
yeah. I mean, especially if it's an account that's not really interactive, like a lot of comments kind of thing, because that's the big thing. Like, people actually commenting on bots. Yeah, because I had those messages too. Like, when it's like, oh, we like your work, pay us money, and then we'll post it up. I'm like, what?
They even do that with like books and stuff. They're like, if you pay $300, we will put your artwork in this book that is essentially just kind of like this collection of art that can be sent to corporations to kind of like view any clients they may be interested. That like, what corporation actually pays attention to that stuff? Maybe they're out there, but like you paying a book $300 so they can use your artwork, that companies probably are never going to see that book. Like, it's not even just social media. Like, they try to do that through emails, and it's like, initially, again, you're not young artist. You're like, but my work can be published in something. It's like, yeah, it's going to be published in something that will never be seen, and it's like you're not getting paid to have your work. Like, it's the opposite of that.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
should be
don't
the
fall for that
opposite.
scam. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, no, you gotta pay me.
Hmm.
I
Exactly.
told that to the gallery, and then you're like, "What? Doesn't make sense. What do you mean? You want to use my work so you can make content out of it? Pay me." Like,
Yeah. Good for
that's how it works. Like, it does not work the other way around.
you.
But artists just don't. Just people that don't have like kind of like I don't want to say confidence kind of thing, but I think just they just don't want to cause any trouble. I guess you could kind of say.
Yeah, well, and it's like especially for folks that aren't as like I still am naive in certain ways, you know?
Yeah,
You just don't realize these kinds of things until you throw yourself in the thicket of it. That it's like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like sometimes you do need that like really blunt friend to tell you that um the
yeah.
equation really doesn't make sense. And so it's kind of embarrassing sometimes to think that like you fell for it,
Hmm.
but it's better that you learn now than later, you know. So
Better late than never, kind of thing.
yeah, thank you. That's exactly what it meant.
All right. Well, this is gonna be like the final question. It's kind of sort of left field, but I'm just curious of what artist's opinion about this. How do you think politics should be in art? Just
I think there should be the option.
okay.
Personally, my art is apolitical,
Mm-hmm.
and it only represent like art is still me, but it represents a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, like a lot of my art, like a lot of people see kind of fear and anxiety in it because I'm kind of predisposed to feel those emotions very intensely, but I can't say that that's like 100% of what makes me me. So like even though my art isn't like political, that doesn't mean that I'm not a political person, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so
Yeah.
I kind of I sort of ride the line with this because I'm like, I think that especially for us that can't articulate our thoughts very well, art is there to express what we feel strongly about. But I've had some people kind of get on my case about like the fact that it's like all art is political. Why isn't yours? And I'm like, hey, we have that's the beauty of it. Is like there's different ways to talk
Yeah.
about these issues, and some don't want to talk about it with their art
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
their art is rooted in something completely different. And so I think just allowing that option for people is great. It shouldn't just be one way or the other, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. Like, for me as humans, if I draw a different human, I've seen people just get, I don't know, just get shit on because like it's a different culture from race, and you're like, you're this race, but you're drawing this race. It's like it gets too like crazy for me. And I'm like, that's why I avoid doing humans for the most part. It's just I don't want to deal with it. Like I don't know.
Like I see a lot of monsters, or monsters and creatures and
Yeah,
gnarly. So I
yeah,
guess I
yeah.
like think about that, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's a story out that came out not too long ago with Marvel Comics. They did a black and white, like so what you do, but had like
Mhm.
one color, like which is red. It was a Electra comic book, and this artist did like Electra, Asian characters, stuff like that. And then Marvel thought for some reason it was just a line with like a little circle to add the, like kind of like eyeballs, but I was like Marvel was like no, add white in the eyeballs to make it better, and then it looked really weird. But they thought it because it was more appropriate or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay. But yeah, so yeah, pretty much we got through everything. Pretty much it's gonna be the final thing. What is the summary of you? Like like kind of like something you want to let the people know. Any advice you have, anything to tell for the new artists, anything like that?
Oh man. How do I sum this up? Me as an artist is like the story for many others. I don't feel like I'm a very eloquent person, so art gives me the chance to just kind of put what's going on here on the paper to sort of I guess get out the good and bad
Hmm.
a little bit. Like art is my primary way to express what I can't express, and many other artists do that. Advice that I could give to other artists, like um,
Gullible artists.
I know, right? It's just like it's as much as we live in this kind of out for yourself go-getter culture, also like take time to give yourself breaks and relax. Maybe that might there's no failure in just giving yourself a rest period so you can kind of go back into the craziness again. And that might be like taking days off art, that might be like going to a museum and just absorbing somebody else's ideas. Like it might be even just kind of going back to basics and practicing something that you otherwise would be thinking is obvious to you, but like there's you don't always have to be cutthroat about it. Just make sure that you take care of yourself too. You don't want art to to turn 100% into work where then you're trying to get away from it. So
Mm,
regularly take breaks, take care
no
of yourself.
burnout. No,
Yeah.
no burnouts. Okay, okay. Well, that's pretty much it. We hit like an hour 17 minutes, so went a little bit overboard, but it was a fun conversation.
Yeah,
We
thank
will
you.
leave the links in the description below to find all our stuff. That's pretty much it, really. Hope you guys hit the like, subscribe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and being here, and I really do appreciate that honestly, because I know it's asking a lot for, especially for an artist like you said, take time off to do something like this. So I really do appreciate it honestly. Thank you, thank you. But yeah,
Thanks.
that's pretty much it. See you guys on the next episode. Peace.